Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to the first LSE SU podcast. My name is Humza and today joining me would be Abdul Azeez. He is a graduated LSE student who studied economics. Assalamu alaikum Abdul Azeez.
Wa alaikum assalam.
How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. How are you?
Alhamdulillah man, I'm doing good. How's lockdown been treating you?
Lockdown's been good. It's definitely a very weird time.
Yeah.
But alhamdulillah, I think humans have been blessed with the ability to kind of adapt and perhaps sometimes trying to see the glass half full as opposed to half empty.
Yeah,
How about you?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Given the time where we're kind of forced to face adversity, we've kind of been given an opportunity to learn how to adapt and like accept things how they are and to just kind of make the best of a worse situation or best of a bad situation. Yeah. All right.
100%, I agree.
Yeah. So in LSE, during your time here, you were very famous for your academic achievements. And I wanted to ask you, I think a lot of us are curious of what was your study schedule like in your first year? And how was your balance with socializing, enjoying yourself, playing sports, and then studying alongside that as well?
Then I wouldn't overstate my academic achievement, definitely. So that's just to start off with. But I think one thing, I'll just kind of say the things that I definitely tried my best to do when it came to studies. And I don't think if it necessarily qualifies as a routine, but I think the things that I definitely tried to do, I wouldn't kind of budge on was, going to like every single class I had to go. And I think the main reason for that isn't necessarily that you go to classes and you fully understand what's going on, because sometimes you can go to a class and you can understand maybe 10%, 20%. Ideally, obviously, you understand most of what's going on, but even just going to a class and feeling that you don't understand things gives you a sense of urgency, because you feel like, okay, like wait a second, I'm quite behind now, and that gives you that sense of urgency to kind of go later and catch up. Whereas I feel if you don't go to class, it's very easy to feel that, I might be behind, half a term on a module, or maybe like a full term on a module, but you don't actually feel that you're behind. It just feels like I'm behind 10 hours on lectures. And it's very easy to kind of end up being behind to the point where it's not really possible to recover. And I think that's the worrying part. And I think that other things in terms of routine is trying your best to like never falling into the mentality where I'm going to spend a full day studying. So I'm never going to spend like 18, 19 hours studying. Always kind of try and break your day up. So always try and study for a bit, do something fun, study for a bit, just to kind of, because there's very, very diminishing marginal returns to when you're studying. So if you study 10 hours, it's probably not much better than studying 8 hours if you study and properly and do it well. And I think the last thing, I think this is probably the more applicable thing to me in terms of routine, is I'm not particularly good at being structured. So I can't really what do they say, like follow a long-term plan. Like someone tells me like, I'm going to do X on this day, X on this day. So for me, it's very difficult to follow that. For me, it's more of kind of long-term targets. I'm going to catch up on this module by maybe this stage, or I'm going to finish off this task by this day. I think the key thing is finding out how you are like and what works for you best, because it's a lot of people say, if you do this, you're set. No, but a lot of people will do exactly what you've told them and still not do well. It's just because it applies to you or works for you doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for someone else. And I think that's also the problem sometimes you see with like self-help books. It's just because someone was successful using that kind of strategy doesn't mean it's going to apply for everyone. But I don't know. I think I personally didn't follow a routine. It was more of just try to keep up with your work and so on. I don't know. How about you, Hamza? What did you do with your routine?
So my first year, it was kind of similar to what you said, but to be honest, my first year academically wasn't the greatest because I kind of left everything to the last minute, and I don't have the discipline to set a target date and then meet it. I always would miss my deadlines and whatnot, and I never really went to classes, and I took a very relaxed approach, which was a big mistake, which I worked on changing in my second year. But I had a question. Whether you said that you set deadlines and then you kind of set a date and you're going to catch up by this point, was there was there like pressure on you at the time? And do you feel like pressure when it comes to your studies, it makes you work better, or does it make you feel worse and more stressed out and makes you panic? What do you think about that?
But definitely, it's always a very tough, because sometimes like a bit of stress is great because it keeps you on your toes and you're kind of feeling that challenge and you're like, okay, I need to work. But then too much stress and you kind of fall apart. I think for me, luckily, I think academic stress never really gets to the level where I'm kind of falling apart, but I can see where that comes from. But I think it's the key thing probably to avoiding that happening is like avoiding leaving it to the last minute. Obviously, it's easier said than done. It's very easy to kind of leave things. And the other thing is making sure that you're doing fun things or hobbies or like socializing, seeing people, even when there are academic deadlines. Obviously not in excess, but just making sure that, you know, I'm going to work hard for 8-9 hours and then I'm going to be able to socialize for the rest of it. And I think that's probably what helps. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's what about you? Was there like a certain way that you used to cope with it, or?
Yeah, it's again, it's similar to what you said. I would obviously, being in the library, you're surrounded by people who you're familiar with. So I would do my work and I would create incentives of like, if I finish my work at this time, I can go talk to this person for 15 minutes and stuff like that to just keep me like awake almost. Because when you're studying all day, you kind of just fall asleep, go into autopilot, and then you get easily distracted and you become inefficient with your work. So I always made sure to, you know, keep up some sports. Obviously, I would cut things down so I'd have more time to study, but just kind of keeping things going, because a lot of people think that when it's exam season, you got to just drop everything and only study. And I feel like for me, I think your mental well-being and your mental health is so important, especially in high pressure situations such as exams, because I feel like the person who studied in small interviews and was relaxed on the day of the exam would do better than the person who studied like 16 hours a day, barely slept, and is like high on coffee on the morning of the exam. What do you think?
No, 100%. It's also especially because at university, a lot of the testing depends less on how much information you retain and more on how you're able to kind of give the intuition. And intuition is incredibly difficult to kind of kind of compress and take in high quantities or high amounts. It really is the kind of thing that you have to build up over time and over the course of the year. So like you said, I mean, 100% definitely agree. And I think that's one of the traps that people fall in. You know, they look at the lectures and it seems very doable. You know, I mean, okay, there's 2 hours of lectures a week and there's 10 lectures a term. 20 hours, it seems like it's, you know, it's easy, light work. But then what you don't realize is you being able to just retain that information that won't give you any marks. And I think I think everyone at LSE realizes that maybe a bit too late. Maybe after your first year or after your first set of exams, when you've already kind of gotten your results, that's when you realize that retaining the information didn't really work, and it's more of the intuition.
Yeah, I
I think
definitely, yeah. That makes I couldn't agree more actually. I find that like luckily we're in a position where the first year only counts as one module, so it's okay to kind of use the first year as a year to learn from. But then second year is where things become a lot more important and a lot more intense. And your second year, you were mashallah, you were the treasurer of the ISOC, as well as other societies, if I'm right. What other societies were you on the committee for?
so. I was also on the Business and Finance Society and Consulting.
Wow, like the big three societies. So with regards to like being on those committees, which they're very active societies, and especially the ISOC, with like events happening every week and whatnot. Like, how did you balance all of that and your academics in your second year, which people often say is the most important year of your studies?
Then I would have hoped that obviously that you do justice to like all the roles that you take on, and perhaps I think one thing is like you kind of the best way to do it is just to kind of be as organized as possible. because I think the key thing to a lot of committee roles and a lot of your studies is if you're organized, you'll be able to get it done. So like if you have, and the other thing is like being organized includes many things. So it's kind of, okay, if you have certain objectives and okay, I'm going to achieve these objectives. So I think that's the key thing. And because when you know the objectives, you're able to work towards them. Whereas I think what is sometimes difficult is when you don't necessarily know what your role is or what your objectives are, or what you want to do. That's when it's very easy to kind of float around. You're not necessarily productive with your time. So I think that's the key thing. If you're organized, you know what your objectives are for each of the committee roles, what your projects are, what you need to get done, and same for your studies. I think in that way it works out a lot better. But isn't that's just the way I did it. And obviously, I wouldn't necessarily advise. Maybe sometimes in hindsight, maybe I would have cut down a bit on the extra curriculars. Maybe I would have chosen instead of doing maybe 3 committee roles, maybe I would have done 2. At the same time, I do think that after partaking in career societies, I do think that I do think that my maybe my outlook on them has changed, and I would definitely look more positively on my time I spent on the ISOC than on the career societies. I think it's very nice when you kind of your passion or what you're excited when you're kind of what you're excited for and what you're working for. I think that's very crucial. And I think you have that a lot more with ISOC than perhaps maybe all the other career related societies. So I think that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah. So with that being said, what were like the main differences in kind of working with the career-based committees and then the ISOC committee? What was like the main differences between the two, if there were any?
I think the main difference you're looking at is the reason why people are there. And I think that's the main, like that's all you really have to think about. Like why is someone who's on the business and finance society, why are they there? And why is someone who's on the ISOC committee there? Or why? And same for the people going to the events, why are they there? And I think that's the main thing. That's the main difference. So so on one hand, one is more career focused, and the other is more, it's community, spirituality, religion, and I think that's the main difference.
Yeah, I think it's I think like the career societies, a lot of people might go into them more for the sake of to build up their CV and their kind of vocational portfolio instead of actually just because they're passion driven by the actual industry and whatnot.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the thing that you kind of realize towards the end of your time at uni, perhaps is less obvious when you're first starting out, is, let's say, being part of a business society or being part of a data science society doesn't really necessarily increase your chances of getting into those industries.
Yeah,
a lot of employers are looking for very generic skills that you could really build up in any society, as long as you're able to prove that you are able to, let's say, take initiative, to lead, to communicate. That ticks the boxes.
Yeah.
Obviously, it may display interest, but you're able to display that interest through other avenues too. Obviously, this is just a personal experience, but I do think that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. I think, but would you say that because a lot of people, they would see the ISOC and they would see it as, oh, this would just be for fun. There's nothing really that I can gain from this on the vocational side of things. But from my experience, from people who I've known who've gone through the ISOC and have put like the skills that they've gained through the ISOC and actually spoken about them in interviews, they had a lot of success with that. And would that be the same case for you?
Yeah, 100%. I wouldn't, because like I said, with the employers don't really care about, oh, it was at this X society or like a certain society. All they care about is if you're displaying those skills. Yeah, that's basically what they care about. And I think with the ISOC or with other societies that are maybe they're more a bit of your intersection of your passion, what you're interested in, people are more eager and keen to go the extra mile, to actually put in the work, where people kind of actually enjoy being part of a they enjoy it a bit more. And I
Yeah.
think that's when, and that works in your favor in an interview, because they see this person is passionate, this person is keen, he's a team player, and yeah. So that's my thoughts on it. So like, I mean, if you do bring up in an interview, they're never gonna look down upon it just because it's part of the Islamic Society. Obviously, it may be the case in some, maybe in some places, but you really wouldn't want to work somewhere there. I think if it's a kind of place where you have to hide the fact that you're part of a Islamic society, then I mean, I can't imagine what it's going to be like when you're there and you're practicing, and it comes up in other when, for example, you're talking about oh, I need a place to pray, or I need to take a break for Friday prayers or something. If you're worried about mentioning in an interview just that you're part of an initiative at university, I think it's quite worrisome what it's going to be like once you actually join.
Yeah, that's really, really a strong point there. I never thought about that myself, actually. It's really interesting to look at things from that lens, because I think like a lot of people, myself included, we struggle with this concept of like career first or deen first and whatnot. And sometimes we like let the dunya take over our deen sometimes, because we're chasing goals like a big paycheck or a specific role, and we kind of forget about our deen. But I really, the points you're making is a very interesting way of kind of like turning your deen into your dunya, like combining the two, so like your dunya becomes your deen, so your work and whatnot becomes a stepping stone in getting closer to Allah. That's a very interesting way to put it. Going back,
just to clarify, maybe two like I think two things is also, like, I'm not trying to discount the career societies. Like, I definitely think there's good that comes out of them. There's opportunities to make connections,
definitely.
to network. There's a lot of like-minded people there.
Mm.
So I'm not discounting them. There's definitely a lot of good in them, but I think you just need to realize that they're not the be all, and they have their limitations too. So it's just that. And the other thing is when it comes to perhaps faith and interviews and so on, it's also, you need to find a kind of a sweet spot where you're not hiding it, but at the same time you don't want to be bringing up an interview every 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, oh my.
Yeah.
So it's also kind of it's a sweet spot, right? Like, it's
Yeah. I feel like it's just
uh,
finding being comfortable and confident in your religion. I completely agree with you. By no means is it something that you should kind of like shout from a rooftop in an interview, but it's something that if an interviewer was to question kind of, oh, you're part of the Islamic Society, and you kind of approach that and respond to that with like confidence, saying, yes, I was, and I did X, Y, and Z, but focus on the skills that you've gained, not actually your activism in the society, because it's a career interview. I mean, depending on the situation, obviously, but I think it's important to focus on the skills gained from it and use
yeah,
it.
100%.
Yeah, I think when it comes to like these societies, I think it's very different being part of the committee and then being a member of the society. For example, because me myself, I've gone to certain events held by career societies, which I found very beneficial, such as like case study workshops, or when special guests were brought in for guest lectures and whatnot. And I found that very impactful, just as the same with the ISOC when they were guest speakers coming in, and muftis and like the khutbas. They were all very like a lot of value from both of them. But what I wanted to ask you, like, what would you say was more impactful to you? Was it being on the committee or being a member of the society?
I think it depends on what you're trying to get out of the society. So if you're more of trying to get knowledge, I think you're probably better served just being just attending the events, because you're actually able to go to events, sit down, focus, sit on the first row or whatever, and like have your notepad and write down and just ask questions. Whereas when you're on the committee, you're a bit more busy focusing on other things. Is the event going well? Is it not going well? So I think the upside of being on a committee is you get skills, and maybe you get contacts. You're more able to get contacts because you're actually liaising with them. You're contacting them. You have their contacts. So I think that's one side. And if attending the event is probably, you get more knowledge. I think you're more able to just benefit from the event itself.
And given what you were involved in your second year, what would you say was like your best high during your second year? Like, what was the best moment for you?
I think reflecting back on second year, I think that the high point, I think for most people in ISOC, I think whether it's kind of attending the events or whether you're on committee is probably when it comes to annual dinner, just because it's kind of when it all kind of comes together. All the work that maybe the entire committee has been doing, it all kind of comes together. Whether it's Freshers Week, whether it's the Charity Week, whether it's Discover Islam Week, all the work of the entire committee, all the members, is all kind of celebrated in annual dinner.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the high. You kind of see, and at the same time, you kind of see the whole community, the Muslim community at LSE. You even see the people from Faith Center, alumni come in, and I think that would be definitely one of the highlights. I mean, just off the top of my head, I think that would definitely be the case.
Yeah.
And you kind of,
yeah, go for it, sorry.
yeah, I was just gonna say, like, definitely off the top of my head, is definitely the main, and it really did earlier. Yeah.
Wait, you cut out a little bit, Aziz. Could you just say that again?
Where should I start again? I was
Just your last
just saying
point.
about kind of annual dinner. Like, I think the main reason it's I would say, oh, just the last point. Okay, the last point. Yeah, I think the main reason is it's where all the work of the society, whether it's the members, the committee, all the events, it all kind of comes together. Annual dinner, all of it is kind of celebrated. You invite it. I think that's the key point why it's, and you see, I think also being on a committee sometimes allows you to see how much work is put into all the events that you don't necessarily kind of appreciate when you're a member. So when I was a member, I attended annual dinner and it didn't feel as maybe as fulfilling. You kind of just go, okay, it's a nice event, so on. But when you're kind of on committee, you see everyone working very hard throughout the year, and then when you see it celebrated, it's very fulfilling. So I think, yeah.
Now, with highs, there's always lows. What was like? What about the tough times during your second year? What was like a tough time, and how did you get through it?
I think if I think of a tough time, I would probably go to maybe two moments. I think one moment was early on when I was trying to get sponsorships, and initially when you're sending sponsorships, it's sometimes it's a very tough process because you email and you get in touch with people and the people don't really reply. They're not necessarily interested, and you send out a lot of emails, you get in touch, and nobody really responds. And it's very kind of so I think that would be one point. But then at the same time, like, all it takes is perhaps a few leads, and all it takes is maybe a few sponsors, and everything was on track. So you kind of keep on trying, and eventually there's. So I think that was maybe one low, but I mean, I think it worked out pretty quickly. And the second one was just before January exams. I think I basically had gone a bit too carried away with the extracurriculars.
Yeah.
And you kind of realize there's a mountain to climb just before the Christmas holidays.
Yeah.
And then and that was definitely a low. And that's when I kind of realized that I had to cut down a bit on the extracurriculars or be more organized, because I mean, it didn't work out perfectly. I wasn't magically, organized and everything was going perfectly. I think Michaelmas term, sometimes things were a bit messy, but I think that's when I realized, no, I need to be more focused. I need to set objectives, what I want out of each role, what I want to do for each role, and then work towards that. And the same with studies. So I think those were probably the two lows. But I don't think, I mean, at the same time, I wouldn't exaggerate them. I don't think they were lows or, times where like things were going particularly tough. No, I think, alhamdulillah, luckily in all my 3 years, I didn't have very bad moments. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, that's good to hear. I think tough times, they're crucial to everyone because there's so much to gain from our lows. Like I'm pretty sure that if you look back on these lows that you were describing, there's valuable lessons that you picked up from them.
100%. And I think sometimes you learn things where a lot of times when you're younger, you're not really taught how to sell. Like selling is a very neglected skill. And at the same time, you don't necessarily think that the person you're speaking with, you normally think that you want to get something out of them, but sometimes you don't realize that they actually stand to benefit a lot from you. And that's a lot of times the attitude you need to have with sponsorships, or when you're having calls with these parties or organizations. You just need to tell them, like, I can offer you this. And
Yeah.
it's more of a, but yeah, definitely. I wouldn't have learned that if I was, just chilling or relaxing, or
Mm.
you have to learn that the hard way.
Yeah, that's definitely something I can relate to, because it's a difficult situation, because it's like you're flirting with the line of confidence and pride when you're kind of selling yourself. But I realize looking for sponsorships myself, it kind of helped me to see that there's like a line where it's perfectly fine to be confident in yourself and show people the value that you have. And then, as well as within yourself, it's just important to remember that obviously that has all come from Allah, and then at the same time that there's a lot more for you to gain, and that like we shouldn't be kind of satisfied with like where we're at. We should always try and strive for better. And I feel like that was something that was really made clear to me in when I was applying to sponsorships, because it was very like a situation where it was almost like applying for a job. You kind of, the only two options is being accepted for the sponsorship or being rejected. So it was a similar kind of process for me mentally.
100%. I can
Yeah.
very much relate.
Yeah. Now,
And
sorry, go for it.
I was just going to say about also the thing with, is you're taught to be kind of humble, but at the same time, selling yourself is also such a crucial skill. And like the line between being humble and selling yourself is, where is it? But yeah, so I can definitely relate on that one too.
Yeah. I was just saying, so like being part of Com, how did being part of Com play into your spirituality?
Mm. I think it's in two ways. So the first way is, a lot of the times, and especially in our Islamic tradition, it's very emphasized, the people you're around.
Hmm.
And I think that's one of the, as much as we kind of like to debate, the purpose of ISOC and objective, one of the main reasons it exists, and one of the main reasons society exists, is to bring like-minded individuals, bring them together. And I
Yeah.
think that's the key. That's one of the main benefits from being on committee or being part of ISOC, is you're able to be around like-minded individuals especially in university. It's very, very crucial. Like the amount of people that go to university and then end up in the wrong crowd. We've all heard stories and what happens. So I think that's one part, extremely important.
Hmm.
And it's also the kind of, like when you go to the talks, when you go to the events, when you're organizing the events, it all rubs off. Like we think that it doesn't have an impact, but literally just being in a talk, being in and Friday prayers. Like why do we have a Friday prayer every week with a sermon?
Hmm.
It's not just because we do it. No, it's because generally that weekly sermon, when you pay attention to it, when you listen, when you see the people, your fellow Muslims, brothers, and so on, it actually does have an impact, and that's the whole purpose. It rubs off, and I think that's the first one.
Yeah.
And then the second one is kind of, I would say, it's the opportunity to kind of serve the community, to serve the ummah, and I think that's especially, when it's kind of done with the right intention. I think that definitely does, because in the end, we obviously you can do your acts of worship and you can be and you can stop at that, but I think it's
Hmm.
also very essential that we don't stop just at our acts of worship and our fara'id and our nawafil and whatever. We don't just stop there, but we also kind of move on to kind of serving our community, whether it's students at LSE or even people outside. So once you kind of start working and you leave the university, to kind of
Hmm.
serve the wider community. And I think that's the two main areas.
Hmm.
What about for you?
For me, it's a similar for you, but from a situation that I came in, I was like in my second year, I was seeking knowledge, as much knowledge as I could get for Islam, starting from a very, very basic point. like from foundations essentially. And you know, again, being around these people, it was brilliant for me to, you know, ask questions and seek knowledge and find ways in which I could better myself and correct myself. And I think one thing that really stood out to me, which I really think benefited me, was the ability to kind of really like be in a position where my actions will kind of affect others in a way like as if I was an influence, for example, a role model, because I'm in a position that's like there's a lot of eyes on the ISOC committee. It's not something that people are unaware of. It's a thing that, you know, you kind of have to take on board, and that will be the case with any leadership position. And I feel like it was a good way for me to start bringing all of this knowledge that I've seen and that I've accumulated and actually start practicing it and to better myself with people and to try and follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ with actual people. Because it's one thing learning all of this, and then it's another thing applying it. And it was a very good situation for me to actually do this. And along with that, the second thing for me is, you know, working on com, we had to do more than just dawah. You know, it's planning events. You know, we had like monetary margins to meet and whatnot, and all of that stuff. It's about, you know, doing those things in a way that you're kind of following the sunnah while you're doing it. And it kind of helped me realize that for every single thing that you do in life, you can find something that relates to it or that can apply to it in the Quran or the Sunnah, and you should try and emulate that and apply it into your situation. So if we're setting up for an event, it's very easy to become short-tempered and stressed, but then I would have to remind myself, all right, look, I shouldn't be shouting at someone because that's not a great thing to do. And it helped me kind of build up these qualities and start to implement them in my life.
100%.
Yeah.
Hamza shouting at people. Can't imagine that.
Yeah. Look, everyone has a bad side, and it's just the stress gets out sometimes. Yeah. But yeah.
Definitely, like with events, you know, everything that can go wrong tends to go wrong for some reason.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think I could say that there was an event that we've done that's gone smoothly, but it's all like a learning process.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, but look, it's like the air hostess kind of analogy. Like as long as you're smiling and keeping like it cool on the outside, no one else will know that something's falling apart.
Very true.
Yeah. So, talking about spirituality, I wanted to ask, what was your journey to Islam like, and what role did the ISOC play? So, if I can, what I mean by that is, like, you know, was Islam something that was kind of very strongly focused on in your household, or was there like outside influences that brought you closer to Islam, and so like so on and so forth?
So I think for me, I'm very fortunate in the sense that, I mean, luckily my family was quite conservative. A lot of our family friends were similar. Also grew up in the Middle East, so people, it was naturally like it wasn't an issue of, you know, it was an issue of, you know, are you practicing or not? Pretty much everyone there was practicing, obviously to varying levels, but it was never really a question. You know, you're Muslim and you're practicing. You know, like it's not even a question of are you or are you not. Obviously, you're just practicing to what level. So I think that was one thing. So alhamdulillah, like I think I don't think I ever thank enough for that kind of privilege or that blessing, because truly it is a really, really massive blessing not to have to kind of go and search, or perhaps, you know, be in a family that isn't really conservative or so on. So I think that was one thing. The second thing, I also went to a school that was also fairly conservative, in the sense that a lot of the teachers, were also kind of very practicing, and you know, we had Quran lessons within our school curriculum. We had Arabic lessons within it. We had Islamic education lessons. Even like Islamic history. So like I think from that angle, I don't know. I feel like I can't give an interesting answer. It's a
No,
very
no,
kind
this
of
is really interesting. This is brilliant.
yeah. I think it's a very but I think it's something that I perhaps don't thank Allah Subhanahu wa Taala enough for. Like it's kind of growing in that environment. And I think what the ISOC did was, I think what university did was I realized how much of a bubble that was. As
Yeah.
in as in you kind of go to university, and there's people from all over, and they're very different to the people that I grew up with. So I think that was one thing, and I think that was a kind of a major shift. And I think a lot of the times what tends to happen in those circumstances, you start questioning a lot of the things that you took for granted. I think
Yeah.
luckily for me, it was actually kind of made me realize how much of a blessing having Islam was, whether it's in the sense of, your purpose, what you want to get out of life, your interactions with people, what you want out of them, like just brotherhood between, just made me realize how lucky we are to have the Muslim community, like it's not, I think it's something we really do take for granted. Like it's not, a lot of people struggle to find the things that we just take to be, oh, it's there, they're there. Even the normally quiet, strong family ties that we have. All of that is something that a lot of people don't have. But I think that the other thing with the ISOC was kind of come to that and you see the LSE and it's all those different people. But then you come to the ISOC and you see genuinely so many Muslims, they're practicing and at the same time, they're excelling in whatever they're doing. Even though it's in the UK and it's in a Western society, but they're generally excelling in what they're doing. They're doing amazing initiatives. And I think that for me was you realize that people can be excelling in the work life, in careers, whatever. And at the same time, they can still be practicing their religion. I think that's that in ISOC was profound.
Interesting. So, um, one thing is that you're an international student coming from the Middle East. What you brought up, how the UK is obviously a Western society, and there's different kind of approaches to religion here. But what was kind of the main things that you noticed that were different, and the main difficulties that you spotted in the West that weren't in the East, and vice versa?
Okay, that's a very tough question. I think the main thing is purpose is kind of very laid out for us. Purpose isn't something that we have to search for. Purpose is very it's there, it's not something, as Muslims you don't have to worry about it. Whereas for a lot of people that isn't really the case. And I think I think that's one thing. I think the second thing is the attractions many of the times Islamically are a lot more you don't necessarily have to take anything out of them. It's not necessarily a benefit reward. I'm not saying that a lot of Western relations are like that, but I think in the West it's more so. Obviously, a lot of people are friends just for the sake of being friends, but I think a lot of relationships are many times a lot more kind of transactional. Say, if can you give me a benefit, or would you, with me, hanging out with you, give me a benefit, or spending time with you, give me a benefit. So I think that's kind of the second thing. And I think the third thing, and I think everyone notices this, is just the socializing. The nature of socializing is just so different. And in the Middle East, especially, everyone socializes at restaurants or cafes, or at each other's home.
Yeah.
Whereas in the UK, that's not really a thing. Most cafes will close by 8 p.m. or 7:30 p.m. and then you have to go to a restaurant. Even restaurants aren't open that late. A lot of them close quite early. And I mean, going to a restaurant involves spending a decent amount of money. So it's also not something you can do regularly. It's something you have to keep kind of, you do every now and then. So I think that's the main thing. But yeah, maybe if I reflected more, I would be able to come up with maybe deeper points or kind of better points. But yeah, that's just off the top of my head.
Yeah, that's interesting perspective on it. I think it's a thing that we don't think about often, but I realize, it's actually something that we should kind of consider, because in both aspects, there's things in the West that people can say aren't so great about when you're a Muslim. And then at the same time, we can say that actually there's some things that are better. For example, being different in society, sometimes it can lead to someone becoming very strong and robust in their unique qualities. And that really allows people to hold certain things closer to their heart. And I think that's something that I see a lot in people who've grown up in Western environments. And they really feel a strong, like they feel very patriotic towards Islam and their identity as a Muslim. Because there's a kind of, it's very difficult to put this in a way that doesn't sound kind of like a complaint, but it's like there's almost a element of hostility, like you have to be proud of where you're from, or otherwise people will kind of bring you down from it. And I think that made a lot of people very strong and passionate about Islam, and very like, you know, I am Muslim and I am proud. And I feel like in a place where everyone around you is Muslim, that kind of element could be lost.
No, 100%. It's yeah. So like you definitely take Islam for granted when you're living in a Muslim country many of the times. You you definitely do take it for granted. You don't realize how blessed you are. You know, a lot of people are searching for, you know, they spend years searching for, you know, their purpose for Islam, and you know, they eventually find it. Whereas for us, we're just kind of born and blessed with it. So I think it's definitely, and moving from the Middle East to the West, you definitely realize that. At the same time, it's not to, like you said, we don't want to complain about the West, because the West has so many very bright spots and you know, very good things about it. And like, you know, there's I think there's a saying by an Islamic scholar. He says that, you know, he went to the West and he found Islam, but he went to the Muslim world and he found Muslims, but he didn't find Islam. Wow. So it's like there's a lot of, you know, like something along those. I think I've messed it up, but like it's something along those lines. But
yeah,
but it's also kind of recognizing that, you know, the West also has, you know, some really bright points. And you know, whether it's in the kind of the way they treat people, the, you know, the human rights, the kind of perhaps the pursuit of, you know, equality or equity. All of those things, I think, are things that we can benefit from as Muslims, and you know, we can so yeah, I think there's also bright spots.
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing that I find incredible about the UK specifically is the institutions that we have here. We have like an abundance of very, very well educated and skillful scholars who are like brilliant at giving dawah and helping out the youth. It's incredible. It's something, again, that like we don't show too much appreciation for, but really it's actually crucial to us, and we kind of miss it because it's become a kind of a norm now.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think and it's like, it's also, it works vice versa. So when you go from the Middle East to the West, you realize how lucky you are to have Islam. Also, when you move from the West to perhaps Middle East, you also realize, you know, how lucky you are in the UK in some aspects. So it works both ways.
Now, coming back to university, what do you feel like your biggest gains were from university? So this isn't just ISOC, but this is like academics, the social aspect, extracurriculums, like your 3 years at university. What do you think were the biggest things you've gained looking back at it?
I think on a very kind of broad point, I think one of the main things I've gained is, they say university gives you a kind of a bit more of a confidence, because you kind of go from your kind of shell or bubble in school, where, you know, you have your friend group that you might have, you know, spent past 5, 6, 10 years, whatever with. For me, I spent maybe 10 years in my school before I left for university. So literally 10 years, probably had the same friend group pretty much, didn't really change much. And you kind of get very comfortable. And then I think when you kind of come to university, initially you're very shy, but over time you kind of, you know, the shell, they say the shell kind of breaks, and, you know, you become more confident. You know, you meet people from a, you know, wide variety of backgrounds, and you kind of interact with them, and you can become more open-minded, become more confident so you become more open-minded, you understand people from different backgrounds, but you also kind of become confident about, you know, who you are, your background, the benefits it brings. So I think that's probably the biggest. I mean, it's a very kind of soft answer, but I think generally, if I was to reflect, I think that's the main thing. And I think a lot of other students would also say the same.
Mm.
It brings about confidence. But obviously, there's a lot of other things that are also important, but I don't know how the
Mm.
question is directed. Like the other
Yeah.
aspects could be, that you find, friends that, you generally think are, you want to keep for life.
Yeah.
Uh, um, like like I said, it's the people you meet. It's, for example, sometimes it's the organization skills. I think a lot of people would say probably the confidence, and yeah, I think that I would say that.
Mm. Yeah, I think confidence is something that can be applied to every aspect of your life when it comes to, friendship circles, when it comes to applying for jobs, careers, when it comes to like going forward with things yourself, like when we're making decisions or we're about to kind of embark on a journey or like try and learn something, we often kind of lack confidence in ourselves, and it kind of prevents us from doing anything because we feel like I'm not going to be successful in this, so there's no point in trying. But I feel like uni, you kind of look back at uni like, I just did this, I just graduated from this academic institution and it was very tough. And I had so many times where I felt like I can't get through this, which I'm pretty sure like most students have. And, alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah, we managed to get through it. And it kind of gives us this kind of like, we've kind of get the ball rolling. Like I'm thinking of university now as like the beginning, instead of, a lot of people kind of look at it as the end of education, but we forget that it's actually the beginning of our life, like for the next however so many years.
Mm-hmm. No, 100%. Because I mean, if you think about it, I mean, people graduate normally 21.
Yeah.
So like you've still got like a long way to go.
That's it. It's like so weird. Like me, I'm at this point now where I'm just thinking I'm going to graduate in 1 year, and then I'm out in the real world, and I'm only 21 years old. What does it feel like for you being in that situation?
Mm. I mean, I think it's like when you're starting anything new, uh, you're kind of excited, but at the same time, you're also kind of it's excitement, which is good, but at the same time, I think like with anything, there should be a healthy amount of kind of worry / stress.
Mm.
Yeah, so I think that's really the key thing. So I think there's obviously you're excited for what's going to come, and it's kind of something new. It's something that you're going to be hopefully learning a lot. There's going to be a steep, as they say, kind of with jobs, like it's a steep learning curve. All those things, but at the same time, you're also worried about when there's new things. You might be good at them, you might not be good at them in the beginning. Obviously, over time you'll improve, but there's a lot of unknowns. You might like your job, you might dislike it, you might completely hate it. you don't know. But on the whole, I think on the whole, if you're just graduating from uni and you're starting a job, you should be excited. It's your first time that you're gonna be like executing things, in a real world environment, building things, selling products to clients, working on them, delivering things. So I think it's something you should be excited about.
Definitely. But what about like the life aspect? Because my mentor actually, he would say this to me when I turned 20. He sent me a message and he said, like in the next 10 years, most people, they get married and start their own family. They establish their career that they like take forward for like the next 10, 20 years. You buy your own house, you settle down. Like this is really the pivotal years of our life, which kind of dictate what happens in the future more often than not. Not that this is the only way. And like that thought, it like at the same time as motivating me, it also kind of gave me that healthy amount of worry and stress of, I don't want to mess this up. And in your position, how do you feel like with regards to that kind of thing? Because obviously being a year older, you're kind of one step ahead. So like you're kind of facing different things to me. So how does that feel in that aspect of things?
So I'll be honest, I was actually speaking to a few people about this. I think because we're still kind of in the summer. This is being recorded in the summer holidays, just before most of us are starting work or jobs. So I don't think it's kind of hit us yet. That there's a lifestyle change. From now you're going to be working. You're going to be in the office 5 days a week. You're not going to be able to structure your day as you want. You're going to be ordered around. That loss of
Yeah.
autonomy, loss of freedom. I don't think it's kicked in yet, or the fact that for a lot of us perhaps will be wanting to. Some of us have already settled down, but others will probably be settling down in the next few years,
Yeah.
buying houses and so on. I don't think it's kicked in yet,
Mm.
but definitely, I think it's, like I said, I think it's something we should all be excited about. It's they're all kind of new challenges, new things, but at the same time, you're obviously worried because they're unknowns. You don't know what's going to happen, but you do your istikhara, you make your decisions. You follow. And you follow like the Islamic rulings when it comes to making these decisions, whether it's in your job or whatever. And you do your best, and you hope for the best.
Yeah, I think like the thing about the schedule, like no more like 4 a.m. nights whenever you want, just either sitting in the library or like just like messing around watching YouTube videos until super late. Like you have to properly knuckle down because there's like things now have like actual consequences.
No 4-hour break to chicken pottage midday.
Yeah, none of that stuff. It's a different of like a complete 180 of like what we spent the like prior 3 years doing. But I feel like it's going to be a new challenge and a new thing that we will conquer the same way like we kind of conquered uni. We just went through it, we developed ourselves, we beat all the challenges that were in front of us, and now we're just going to have to face a lot more challenges. And it's a good way to kind of like keep us going, I guess. Because I think I would, like me personally, I would never want to be in a position in life where I'm comfortable. I hate that. I get bored too easily.
No, 100%. But I do think, yeah, like 100%. I think it's good to always, be challenging yourself, be on your toes. But yeah, indeed, I think it's good to always be on that
Yeah.
kind of level.
So initially, I asked you what was your biggest gains from uni, but now I want to ask you, what do you wish you did more of a uni, or things that you wish you did, like full stop?
Ooh, that's again
A loaded
quite a
question,
tough
yeah.
question. um, I don't know. Like I'm not entirely sure because with everything, sometimes some things happen and maybe you're upset about them, but obviously there's a hikmah in them, or there's an upside.
Mm,
So you don't know, because like sometimes you don't know. Let's say for example you hadn't done that thing, maybe you wouldn't have the same opportunities now.
yeah.
I think one thing definitely that I would have done is maybe have a bit more of a narrower focus rather than a wider focus when it came
Yeah.
to what I wanted from extracurriculars and careers.
Hmm.
So maybe, yeah, so like as in, because the narrower your focus, the more you're able to kind of put
Extract,
your
yeah.
time in efficiently.
Yeah.
Whereas when you kind of have a narrow, very wide focus, so I think that's the main thing. But I don't know if I could have done it any better, because now the fact that I had a wide focus in the beginning, then it kind of narrowed, has probably helped contribute to making me maybe more well-rounded in some aspects, maybe more confident in the choice that I made, because I'd
Hmm.
explored a lot of options, and then when it came to narrowing it down, I was confident that I'd explored them. So now that I was confident in kind of discarding some of them. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a maybe if I reflect on it a bit more, I might be able to come with a better
Hmm.
question, better answer.
Yeah. No, if anything comes to your head at any time, just bring it up again. But moving forward from that, what advice would you have for incoming second years and like for the summer internship applications and the academics? Because I feel like you have spring weeks in first years, but like it doesn't scratch the surface of the change in like applying to summer internships and kind of the vigorous process that they put you through there.
100%. I think it's like with spring weeks, they take it that that you're that you're a first year. You don't know much. They take it easy on you. they kind of expect that you don't know much. So it makes like your life easy. They don't ask you many challenging questions. The process is fairly simple. So definitely second year is a step up, and it's in everything, in all departments, whether it's in your jobs, um, whether it's in academics, it's all a step up. So it's good to be focused, and it's good to anticipate that it's coming, so it doesn't really hit you hard. So I think my biggest advice in terms of summer internships, again, there are many people who have done probably better than I did, and would be able to give better advice. But I think the key thing is don't underestimate them. Make sure that your CV is spotless, because that's
Yeah.
the main determinant most of the time. Make sure that it's sometimes it's the things that you think are irrelevant, but
Mm.
really because they're looking at your CV for only a few seconds, they're actually the most important. So it's things like the layout, everything is in line, that it looks nice when it's zoomed out. The spacing is equal. So making sure that it actually looks very neat, very tidy, maximizing the amount of white text, reducing the amount of text.
Mm.
So maximizing the amount of white space and reducing the text, so
Yeah.
everything is very easy to read. It's stuff like that. You don't want to think that they're important, but making sure that it's just very easy to read, well formatted. A lot of people have looked over it. No silly mistakes, no spelling errors, and then honestly widen your net, because the process is very competitive, and a lot of times it is very random.
Yeah.
So obviously people say that you should focus. I mean, a lot of people take it two ways. Some people say like, oh, you should focus and make super good applications and focus on them. But I think from what I've seen, I think widen your net, apply to a lot of places, and you'll get interviews, maybe interviews from places that you don't really want to work at, but they'll serve as practice for the places that you really want.
Mm.
And the worst case scenario is, sometimes it doesn't work your way and you don't get the places that you really want. But at least you still have the plan B that you're able to do over summer, and then maybe in your third year when you're applying for grad jobs or maybe internships again, you
Mm.
have that experience behind you that will put you in a better place to get what you want.
Yeah.
So I think that's the main thing. And then when it comes to interviews, make sure to utilize the LSE kind of network, and specifically ISOC. Like, you'll be surprised and amazed at how much people in ISOC are willing to help each other out. People
Mm.
will generally be willing to kind of go out of their way to give you help, give you advice. And I think that's something that's very underrated. And it's probably the reason why people at LSE do so well, is the fact that you're able to get such good one-to-one help.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you mentioned the same thing for the same, like applying the same advice for third years, because that's actually what I was going to ask you next. What would you advise to third years who are applying for jobs now, and like the pressure of securing grades? Because there are some students, mashallah, who very bright and they've already secured their grades, and then we have some students who need to achieve certain grades in their second year in order to meet their offers for jobs and actually, secure something. Like, what would you advise to third years who are in that kind of situation?
So actually, I think that's one point I wanted to mention, but I forgot. Is
Hmm.
don't ever sacrifice your academics, because academics come before jobs, always. Because basically, you're better off graduating with a 2-1 or a first than graduating without one. Because let's say you graduate with a 2-1 or a first. Okay, sure, you may not have the internship you want or the job you want, but guess what? You've graduated with that grade and you're still able to apply. But if
Hmm.
you don't get that 2-1 or that first, you're not even able to apply in the first place. There's
Yeah.
a lot of stories of people who, they got the graduate job that they wanted, and they turned up on results today and they had a 2-2. And a lot of the employers actually just turned them down and say, like, sorry, we can't take you.
Hmm.
And that's probably the worst position you can be in, because you've worked so hard to get that job, but then you don't have the grade result to go there, and you can't even apply anywhere else or a lot of other places.
Yeah.
So it just puts you in a really bad place, and you can't change it. What can you do? You can't really go back and change your grades. It's kind of set in stone. Obviously, if things work out, it's not the end of the world. Plenty of people will get to choose and do amazing things in life. But they're just more
Definitely.
limited in the employers that they apply to. So I think that's the main thing. Just make sure that you get the grades. The grades come first, and then the jobs. It comes in. It works out.
Yeah.
And honestly, one thing is, like, don't sell yourself short. Like, you can generally, as an LSE student, there's not a single employer that you're not more than good enough to work for. You name it, you're probably more than good enough to work for. So don't sell yourself short ever. Like, I know it's cheesy and it's maybe a bit cringe, but it's generally true. So don't sell yourself short. Don't say like, oh, this employer, he won't ever, look at my profile. My profile is not good enough. I don't go to X uni, or I don't have X experience. No, generally, like you're definitely good enough for every employer. Pretty much.
Yeah. Sorry, Aziz, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly.
Yeah, sorry, man. The last bit of what you were saying just cut out just after you were speaking about not selling yourself short. Just the last few sentences.
Yeah, so I was just saying, like, don't really sell yourself short. It's as an LSE student, you're, especially the kind of backgrounds that a lot of the LSE ISOC students come from, sometimes underprivileged backgrounds and so on.
Yeah.
You're genuinely more than good enough for pretty much every single employer out there. And generally don't ever go for that. Don't ever believe that a lot of what people say, like, oh, you don't go to X university, like you don't have a chance at this employer, or you don't have X experience. No, every single employer out there, even the very best ones, you realize people at LSE do get interviews for.
Yeah.
So it's just about applying, putting in work for your application, whether it's the networking, whether it's the research, and then you apply and you display what your skills are at the interview, and like you should be able. So don't sell yourself short. Be confident. And I think also maybe the very last point is don't go into something that you're not comfortable doing. So a lot of people, they go into areas that are a bit more maybe shady Islamically, and then there's no point doing something that you're not comfortable. It could be the best job in the world, but if you're not comfortable, there's no point. In the end, money is there to bring you ease of mind, to bring you that kind of stability. And if you're not comfortable and you're stressed, there's no point. Why would you even do it?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Wow, mashallah. That's really insightful, really good. That actually brings me to the end of my questions for you. This has been amazing. I've learned so much, and I hope that anyone listening gains as much or more than I have. Any final remarks, Aziz?
I think that's it from my side. I'll save you hearing my voice for any longer.
No,
But it was really good speaking to you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
It was really good, really good to have you on, and inshallah, it would be brilliant to have you on further down the line as well to see how the working life is treating you.
Exciting times.
Perfect. Jazakallah khair.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum.